All right. Good evening. Temporally appropriate greetings, everyone. Welcome in. It is 7:30 my time, 5:30 Pacific time, and we are supposed to be starting up the PA8 track right now. I am James Gilley, Dr. James Gilley, Doc G, that guy, whatever. Please call me whatever you would like. Welcome in. Thank you for joining me for the talk this evening. This talk is entitled a framework for thinking and discourse on Martian governance. And this is actually part of a series of talks that we've put together and part of a larger body of work that extends beyond just myself. This is part of a larger thing that we're trying to get up and running from a group we're going to call Mason. We're going to talk about them in a minute. But there's also going to be another talk tomorrow night with Dr. Hannah Earnshaw, and they're going to be presenting the first actual Mars paper world, right? So Mars paper number one. In fact, there's Hannah right now. Welcome in. Welcome in, everyone. As I said, I am James Gilley, and this is PA1, the Martian Papers, a framework for thinking and discourse on Martian governance. So let's go ahead and dive in, shall we? I would recommend to open up Zoom in speaker view and to have me pinned. I think that'd be probably the best way to do this. I'm not a big fan of screen sharing, so I do the bells and whistles this way. So this is a talk that is designed as part of a larger series and a larger body of work from a group that we've founded actually after Mars Society last year called MESA. And our idea is to publish a series of papers called the Martian Papers. And what this talk tonight is going to get into is, what are the Martian Papers? What is their purpose? What do we envision with this? And how is it going to help foster the conversation, the discourse, right? And really thought on the way that we're going to try to craft Martian governance, right? We've heard talks about how we can get to Mars in the next decade. If we're going to do that, then we really need to be diving heavily into the questions of, well, what are we going to do when we get there? And not just from a purely technical perspective, but we're all people, and we're talking about putting people on Mars. We need to have a strong focus on the people. So what the Martian Papers are set up.
We might have just lost James there. We'll just wait a minute, probably come back.
That was strange. If it was just on my end, I deeply apologize. I don't know what happened. It just closed and reopened. So let's get back to it, shall we? Sorry about that. Oh, it looked like I did it again. Okay, no, it didn't do it again. We're still here. We're still live. As I was saying, right, we've created an institution, well, at least a group called MESA after Mars Society conference last year. We actually have a couple of members on the call tonight, and we are looking for further membership as well. Well, there'll be a call to action at the end of this, classic TED-style talk, if you will. So what we're doing with this, we are attempting to address many of the novel problems with institutional governance, with creation of institutions that come with Mars, right? We know that there's going to be a lot of very new situations we're going to get into. But that doesn't mean that we're without historical precedent or historical analog for many of these issues, right? Well, I think the 16th and 17th centuries gave us a lot of look, and into the 18th centuries gave us a pretty good look into what some of the problems we're going to face will be. So in general, what we're saying is that we want to do something on the lines of a Federalist Papers for Mars, right? That we think the Federalist Papers, or at least I think the Federalist Papers, have a decent framework for at least the discussion about how to build a government, right? They are meant to be a persuasive argument, but they're also meant to help foster discussion. So that's really what we're setting out to do with this, right? We will be discussing with this talk in particular, the first one, right? The first just general introduction of our Martian Papers, which we're going to release after the conference. So let's go ahead and continue on. So there is an interesting historical context for us, right? And not just for the founding of the United States, right? But we're talking about the historical context we find ourselves in right now, right? When we're talking about doing human settlement, right? We already have permanent human occupation of space. We've had this for 2 decades now, but it's been very ad hoc, if you will, right? The way that we have built the institutions to manage that settlement is very much between nation states, very much predicated on a centric model. There's really not a lot of framework for how settlement would work outside of low Earth orbit, right? And there's myriad questions, legal questions that exist about human settlement beyond Earth. There's tons of questions that emerge about what it means to be Martian, how we could go about creating a Martian government. And this is really what this Martian Papers project is to lay out a framework, a discussion for dealing with the questions of how would we go about building a Martian government and trying to drive towards actually creating Martian governance. So historically, I think that we do find ourselves in a somewhat analogous position to those 18th century British colonies. If we talk about actually settling on Mars, right, there is independence, but at the same time, there's economics back to the home world, right? I think there's some decent analogs, and but further work, right, further papers can dig into what that particularly is. But I think it's just nice frame setting to realize that this isn't an entirely unique situation, right? That other governments have had to be created from scratch before, although there's a lot of historical precedent that goes in even to that creation. So I think it's good for us to realize that while this is pretty novel and unique, we're not entirely on our own with this. So what are the Martian Papers themselves, right? This is, as I said, deliberate discussion about the political problems facing governance of Mars, right? We
seem to have lost James again. I'm not sure what's happening there. I'm sure he'll just rejoin again, so just be patient there.
That's pretty annoying. I don't know why.
Sorry, I don't know what's happening there. Yeah.
I don't know why, but we carry on. There we go. Let's get that back open. Just keeps crashing, but we're good to go. It's like every time I finish a slide, but let's do this thing. So what are some of the political considerations we have for these papers, right? They're meant to be easily digestible. They're meant to be understandable for a lay audience, right? Or a non-political audience or a non-technical audience, right? We want everyone to be able to read these and participate in the discussion. So what are the things we really need to consider, or that we consider as core for this project? Well, we at our core believe that these papers are explicitly oriented towards making humanity a species, right? That is at the core of all of this. That is our purpose, our distinct purpose. But there's a lot of other topics that we have charted out that we are going to be writing on. The first of it, and we're actually going to have a presentation with Hannah Earnshaw tomorrow, is talking about what sovereignty is, how we should establish the idea of sovereignty, and how it could benefit all of humanity in the long run if we shift our model of what sovereignty is. In the near future, we're also going to be publishing talk about papers on the question of Martian independence and why we believe Martian independence, political independence, is important for both the success of the project overall, as well as reducing risks for essentially helping to reduce conflict between Mars and other instances of humanity that could result in existential crises. Further down the road, we're going to be talking about the establishment of strong trading ties between Mars and other instances of humanity. Right, we think Mars should be a trading state, but not necessarily resources, or at least physical resources in the way that we think. But Mars should be heavily involved in trade with the rest of humanity. We have a series of papers that are going to come out that are going to deal with the rights, duties, and entitlements of a Martian citizen, right? Of how Mars as a government and Mars as a people are going to interact with each other, and the things that we're going to hold to for that, right? We know Dr. Cockrell is going to be talking about building a liberty-oriented Mars. This would actually help support that as well. We have questions about what it actually means to be Martian and how Martian settlement will influence and change what it means to be human. We do have to get into those larger questions about. I swear I'm using fiber optic internet. I am hardwired in. I don't know what's going on. All right. Every time I finish a slide, we move on. Okay. So MESA, the larger group that we have created that is going to be publishing these Martian papers, is a new framework group, right, where we're going to be having the discussions about what these Martian papers should be, right? So this is an acronym, right? Space people, we love our acronyms. MESA is the Mars Ethical Settlement Alliance. This was created after the 2020 Mars Society meeting. And this is, right, there is a core group of us. Hannah's involved. There's several other people that are in this conference this year that are all participating that are serving as core authoring groups. And then the MESA itself will be publishing the Martian Papers online and hopefully in a collected volume along the way. Functionally speaking, MESA is like Publius, right? There were multiple authors that were Publius for the Federalist Papers. That's kind of what we envision MESA being, right? Is our Publius. We're signing our Martian Papers as MESA. And we're looking to grow our membership, right? We want you to be a part of this. We want a diversity of voices and perspectives, but we do want it to be aimed towards this common goal of building Mars. And to support that, right, we have a preamble of a constitution. So just letting you know, in the future, we do have further work we're seeking to do. We have a presentation tomorrow on Mars paper number 2. Hannah Earnshaw will be presenting that, and I'll be in the audience for that one as well. We're going to be really diving into the questions of sovereignty and independence over the next, so be on the lookout for those Martian papers. The idea is within the next several years, we want to actually work towards drafting a constitution, and then maybe in the next 10 years or so, right as it's about time to start settling Mars, we're talking about actually helping to build up, and this is the pie in the sky, dream big thing, actually building a governance institution on Earth to help further the goal of Martian settlement and to essentially serve as a bridge institution between Mars and Earth, right? Between the government of Mars and Earth nations. Right. So as I said, we have actually laid out some principles, right? We have drafted a preamble to our Martian Constitution, and it reads as follows. We, the Martians, declare Mars to be free and independent state. This state and this planet will benefit the people of Mars for the purpose of making humanity a multiplanetary species. We declare Mars to be a sovereign entity, separate from the rest of human structures, yet part of the larger tapestry of the human experience. We seek peace and trade with all who wish it, but also choose to establish and defend our own independence. Mars shall seek to uphold liberty, the preservation and continuity of life, stewardship of the planet, and the provision of justice for its people. We seek to fill Mars with life and work towards making the planet accessible and habitable for the full spectrum of humanity. Therefore, we the Martians establish a sovereign Martian republic and declare this to be the Constitution of the Republic and its supreme law. So those are kind of the general principles, right? The whole idea there was to lay out the general principles and the common goals we're working.
So we're continuing to have connection issues with our speaker. We'll just be patient. I think we'll just continue with it.
I'm sorry, I don't, it's like every 5 minutes it drops me out. So yeah, I'm willing to address any questions you might have. All right, Pablo. Ask here. All right, what political system you think will be the optimal choice for the first city country? So we're still working on that. We think it's going to be some sort of version of a constitutional republic. The exact particulars of that we're still working on, right? I have my belief that I think it's going to be some version of a parliamentary democracy, but there are many considerations to bring in there. How do you think, should we start experiments on this topic now on Earth when groups of people will be, we don't need to experiment on Earth. We have history to help us there. So we don't need to be running experiments on the social questions. We have history to guide us. Trying to put everything into laboratory conditions generally doesn't function very well. So instead, it's about building institutions that will be flexible enough to adapt to situations on the ground. What I think about crypto anarchism as direct democracy, I actually think that could play a big role in this. I like the idea of a more direct democracy, but the problem, there are inherent problems with direct democracy, because it in many ways, direct democracies can become mob rule extraordinarily quickly. So there's a lot of ways that we can think about leveraging technology to bring us into a more functional, more advanced, better political system. We do have a lot of lessons that we have learned throughout history there. All right. Contact information. I am, well, the Discord is really going to be the best place to get into touch with me, and just with the group in general, or at the Mars Papers, send us a message there. All right. There's the Society for the Creation of the Republic of Tharsis. Republic of Tharsis declared the Constitution should be that does, all right, that seems to be fairly in line with what we are proposing here. We don't have a name for anything, right? I think we've kind of named it Mars. Tharsis, we can go in that as well. But yeah, that definitely seems to accord with a lot of the basics of what we've been looking at in our preamble. There are other questions?
Yeah, and feel free to unmute yourselves as well if you want to ask questions.
James.
Yes,
can you hear me?
George. Yes, George, I can hear you.
Wouldn't it be better to start something sooner because of so many countries getting involved in this? I'm expecting the next 5 years to see just a whole lot of activity going out there, and there needs to be some type of organization and governance of what's going on. And just within the presentations today, I've seen doubling up of efforts in areas that don't really need to going to Mars. I mean, I'm seeing 3 different countries doing Mars rovers similar to what's been done on Mars 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And they're redoing all this from scratch. And there's no common denominator. And I think the sooner we get one common governance and get this as a global mission, not just independent countries mission, and that's where it's at right now. It needs to come together somehow quicker. And the way what you're wanting to do, I think needs to be started now, not in put it on fast track.
I actually think that's the argument that I'm making, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think the framework for actually trying to make Martian settlement work is to make Mars independent from the moment a human being steps foot on it. I don't think a nation state's going to be able to move fast enough to get to it first. So I think that it's going to be a private mission, or at least, well, private in the sense of not sponsored by one of the Earth nation states.
Well, what I'm thinking is that just like people have offshore corporations that aren't tied to any country, there's going to be an offshore corporation set up as a governing body, and Mars Corporation will be one of those offshore corporations. With this,
we're all
that is very much in the wheelhouse of what we're working on here, right? Okay. That is exactly what, like, the path that we were envisioning that this is going to take, right? For a Martian settlement to work, right? There's going to essentially need to be the government of Mars, which would be an Earth corporation, before it happens. And and we're essentially trying to work towards drafting the corporate charter, which serves as a constitution.
Right. I'm saying somebody elected here as a corporate officer actually going to stepping foot on Mars, being the ones, the governing body on Mars, and can make those decisions on Mars as they happen.
Yeah. I mean as Han is going to present tomorrow, we're very much thinking about this idea of declaring Mars sovereign, from the get-go, right? That's what we are. That is our framework. None of this go to Mars with anything other on your shoulder other than the flag of Mars. Is our vision.
Very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Very good. Pablo, you already have some articles of constitution which will limit government to overgrow? There are a lot of constitutions that already exist, and we can pull from those as examples, right? We've learned a lot of lessons about what sort of things work and don't work, but we also have the ability to make new ideas. Do we have the articles of a constitution yet? No. Right? We are 6 months into figuring this out and trying to launch this, more or less. We are always willing to have more voices join us to help us get towards that. And we do think that we would want, right, our back of the pocket, right, back of the envelope math is that we want to have a constitutional convention within the next 5 years to actually hash out what this could be, right, and get people to buy in. That's what we're working towards.
So I have a question for you, and that is, it seems to me that to say that there'll just be one government on Mars is it seems to me that one of the real advantages of moving out into space is that there'll be many different government, different organizations. There might be 10 different governments on Mars that will have different ideas and so on and so forth. So your thoughts on that?
So one of the pieces of the framework that we're working on, and one of the papers, it's within, I think it's marked out to be one of the first 5, is an argument for why we think that Mars needs to be a unified political body, but it could be very federal in nature, right? So allowing for a lot of experimentation within it, but in order to, right, essentially defend itself from outside claimants, it needs to be a single united political body externally. Right there, right. I am a big fan of federal systems, allowing for lots of experimentation, allowing for every different group to do what they want to, as long as they're working towards a common goal and setting, right, the broad parameters, right? The idea with this wouldn't be to set up a very micromanaging style government. It would be a government that empowers people to live the way that they want to live, as long as they work towards the common goal, which in this case would be populating Mars and making humanity multiplanetary.
There's 2 of them, and I'm trying to decide.
Okay.
All right.
This one's open at 2 o'clock.
All right, Rob, looks like we got a hand up.
Hi. Yeah. I've been thinking about this for a very long time. And my proposal for Mars was one single national government with multiple cities, where each city can experiment with it, whatever government they want. Basically, the national government being absolutely minimal. And one of the things is that the municipalities are not allowed to have a military, so they are not allowed to go to war with each other. One of the big jobs of the national government would be to prevent war. But if you want to experiment with various different organization or governmental systems, each city can do whatever they want, basically. And if somebody wants to set up a homestead in the outback, to borrow a word from the Australians, where you're not under the authority of any municipality, basically you're on your own, dude. Have fun. Nobody's going to bug you. Go at it.
In political science, the word for that is federalism. So that's very much the model I have in my mind, and those of us that have been involved with this so far have leaned towards a very strong federalism with a lot of local adaptation, or just you by yourself off on a homestead doing your own thing, as long as you're part of the overall system. I think our session is ended. I would love to continue this conversation elsewhere. It looks like several of y'all have already jumped into the Discord, and that's great. Looks like we had a couple of people sign up on the site. I'm going to make sure over the next couple of days that I get to that. So yeah, if we want to continue this conversation, we can do that elsewhere. Would love to do this. Love to hear from all of y'all. And yeah, so thank y'all very much for coming in. Good conversation. I really appreciate it. And hopefully you'll go to Hannah's talk tomorrow. Right, they're going to be fantastic. That's the one I'm really excited to go to myself. So I'll see you all there. Thank you all again. Have a great evening, and go Mars.